Hey, Yoshi, thank you for coming on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. How are you doing?
I'm doing great.
Good. It's really great meeting you. I know we've talked quite a bit already about so many of the things that we have going on in oil and gas and kind of where you're at. But most recently, we were talking about you graduated, you grew up in Houston, and you went to college in Houston, and then you made that transition out here to the Permian, and that was a really great decision for you to make.
Well, I went to school in Austin. I grew up in
Oh,
Houston,
okay.
but I went to school in Austin at University of Texas.
Oh,
I
right, right.
graduated with my petroleum engineering degree, started working in the oil field when I was in 2015 and as a production engineer. I was a worksite supervisor for a bunch of workover rigs at the time, and I learned a lot from consultants and I learned a lot from people in the field, and that was one of the best experiences that I had. I find it a little bit funny that when I chose to go to Midland, I told my employer that I wanted to come out here for the work experience because I heard that there's a lot of work out here. I got a lot of hard time from people that were working at the company that Midland wasn't the best place to go to. You're going to be bored there. All you're going to do is work. But to be fair, that's all I wanted to do anyway. So it was a
Right.
perfect fit.
Hmm.
I wanted to immerse myself in the industry after coming out.
Well, did what made you think of that? I mean, because that was kind of forward thinking, especially getting that kind of discouragement. Was it just like you knew this is where you needed to be, or I mean, had you like seen someone else and their roles kind of grow, and you knew that this was like it's the mecca essentially of oil and gas, and so you're absolutely right. But it is hard for people to transition out here.
Well, I had a little bit of a chip on my shoulder because I've had many mentors throughout university and before I went to university that having field experience is crucial. What they also told me is that they wouldn't take a woman seriously because chances are women don't want to go to the field or they're perceived as people that they don't want to go to the field. They rather be in the office due to safety reasons or due to how guys are out in the field. And I wanted to fight that stereotype so badly. And I also wanted to well, not fit the mold, but I also wanted to be a part of that community or be a part of the work, which is why I said that I wanted to go to the field. I wanted to get that experience. I had a huge fear of missing out. I think a lot of millennials say FOMO. I had a FOMO for the field.
Yeah, I could see that, but and also like for me being in the field and still being in oil and gas the way that I am now, I think that it's a very different experience when you've actually gone into the field. Whereas if you never had, you don't really know what it looks like. You don't know what it feels like. You don't know what the drive is like, and you don't have that hands-on experience. And so you're absolutely right that having that field experience that sets you apart, and then you're a part of it happening. And especially with women in the industry, there is a stereotype, and that's been from the beginning of time, that most women have softer roles, or there are fewer roles for women, especially in oil and gas, but across most industries, it's male dominated. And I mean, oil and gas is certainly no different. And I mean, we are very, very small minority being females in oil and gas. However, I think especially in the last 5, 10 years, we've seen a lot of women come up in different roles and are really making a difference. And I think that it's more inclusive now for females, but it's still hard. It's still a battle, but there's more room at the table. There's more open-mindedness, and there's more understanding of what we're capable of doing. But you do have to prove yourself. And if you prove yourself in the wrong crowd, you're wasting your time. You're never going to get anywhere. They're never going to accept you. They're not going to take you seriously. But if you work with the right people that have, that forward thinking, that are open minded, that they just see you as a bright mind and they know that you have something to contribute, you can flourish. Whereas if you're with someone that's never going to give you a chance no matter what you do, then you are wasting all of that knowledge and experience, and you're just fighting to survive.
Exactly. I was really lucky to have mentors at the very beginning of my career before I even started my career. It all started when I was a part of a gifted and talented mentorship program in high school. And I am a product of Women in STEM initiatives. So I knew I wanted to do petroleum engineering because I went to a camp at University of Houston before I went to high school. And that's how I knew I wanted to do petroleum engineering. And then I got into this mentorship program where we were tasked to send cold emails throughout people in the industry of choice to seek work experience during your senior year of high school. I had the wonderful opportunity of I got one email back out of those cold emails. And that one email ended up becoming my first mentor in the oil and gas industry. He introduced me to SPE, or Society Petroleum Engineering conferences, introduced me to the importance of networking, how this is a people business, but also introduced me to the business and the technical side of oil and gas. So having that first impression by my first mentor spoke volumes and set the footing for me to develop my passion in this industry, and really not just have a chip on my shoulder, but just be someone who simply exists and just happens to be a woman.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, you definitely had your track laid for yourself. Like you knew what you wanted to do. And I mean, they say that, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. You just needed that one connection. And I mean, in hindsight, I wish I would have had more of a path like that. Mine was very uncharted, no map, no mentor. Didn't even realize, seeking out a mentor or, putting myself in that position. I definitely learned through grit and grace and just, working blue collar and learning that you are absolutely right. It is about networking and about people and relationships. But that's a double-edged sword.
Right.
Because if you have the right relationships, you can really do amazing things. But if you have people in positions that are employing certain positions because of their relationship and that person's not qualified, you are creating a limit and discourse, because then people are having to operate around this individual that's not right for the position. It's wasted payroll, it's wasted resources, and then you end up getting a culture of people being placed in roles that they're not ready for, they have not earned, they're not qualified for. And then you give them a title and somebody else does their work. And I have seen that, I've experienced it myself. And so that's one network that we have. I do believe it's somewhat of a dying breed because people want to do good business more than they want to help out their buddy.
Yeah.
Like if you're not capable, you want to hire your buddy so you guys can at least be in it together. But if you're an individual that is smart and innovative and you're a business owner, you want to hire the individual that's going to make a difference.
Right.
That's going to make a positive impact. And then you want to create that ripple effect. So for me, being able to see the difference, is so much that we can do in oil and gas. And there's so much more when we stick together and we say, hey, networking events are great, organizations are awesome, knowing the right people and putting yourself in those circles, so to speak, because, oil and gas is very segregated in a lot of ways. There's different parts of the industry that would never necessarily overlap. They're part of the same industry, but you've got different different parts of the industry where people feel like more at home. And so you've got field work, you've got office work, and so on and so forth. But here in the Permian Basin, we have become a much tighter knit community, I think, with oil and gas. The use of social media and marketing and LinkedIn and networking events have made it very easy to connect and feel comfortable, because then you trust your network's judgment. And if they introduce you to someone, you are automatically put in a position to excel or to feel confident. But if you're on the flip side of that and you feel like you can't trust anyone, this other person that you're meeting is probably the same way. And you get further and further down a path where it's nothing but frustration. But if you can position yourself with your gifts, your skills, with the right people, you can truly do anything.
I agree with all of that 100%. That's why I've been using social media to position myself with the skills and show the skills that I do have, and make sure that whoever does vet me or whoever does advocate for me are advocating for my skills, and not just because I'm just someone that they enjoy being with, or that they just like, or I'm their buddy and they're doing a favor for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I try to make that a priority. It's the merit. It's the skill set. It's the qualifications that make me as somebody that you should advocate for, or maybe somebody that or maybe I could be in that position to help you. Because networking is a two-way street. It's not just about what others can do for you. It's what you can do for that other person as well.
Absolutely. And that gets into a gray area, but the opportunity there, can just reverberate. Because if you're doing a favor for me and I'm doing a favor for you just because we're friends, well, we might not be serving by doing that. And then if you're creating friendships and relationships just simply for, personal gain,
Sure.
it's very limiting and it's not authentic. But if we can put our skills together and we can introduce each other to different people, there's no limit to the opportunities that we're creating, not just for ourselves and each other, but for these other individuals as well. So it's really refreshing when when I really started getting more into social networking. I was a little bit behind in the times because I'd never been on LinkedIn, and I'd had different oil and gas people encourage LinkedIn, but there are certain positions that you're going to network more with LinkedIn. There's different parts of the industry that aren't going to translate the same.
Right.
And you don't necessarily have anything to post or to share, but if you join an organization, if you learn like this is a part of the industry that you want to be in and you want to serve, midstream, upstream, downstream, in the field, out of the field, like what are we all doing to work together? You can create your own network to where it seems like everything is in harmony. So if your individual network is in harmony and we're all doing that, that's where we create that social change.
Exactly. And the way that I've fostered that, or what I've seen that's worked from other people in my network, is asking a simple question, and not necessarily a question for personal gain, but asking a technical question, a question about the industry, a question about how something works in the industry. It can be inspired by, I saw a talk at a conference and this individual said something very interesting, and you want to know more. So your line of curiosity goes towards that technical question, and you pose that question to your network, and then you have people who end up commenting on your post, and people start sharing those free. It's like a free market of ideas, I would say, and that's something that I've really appreciated through the social media. But on the flip side of the coin, I actually recently put up a post that now that I have some free time up until the new year, I wanted to develop relationships with my network or reconnect with people with my network. So what I ended up doing is that I said that I'm free until the new year. Let's reconnect. If you're in the Midland, Odessa area, have coffee, have lunch with me, fill up my schedule, and we'll take it from there. Let me know how. And I do end it by let me know how I can help you. This isn't necessarily for personal gain. It's more of I really want to reconnect. This is a relationship business after all.
Well, and I've noticed too, because it's a vulnerable thing
Yeah.
to put yourself out there like that. But it is through that vulnerability that those authentic relationships are built.
Yes.
And so you have to believe in it and be willing to do that, to break down those walls.
Absolutely. And in fact, I'm more willing to help somebody that is willing to make the time for me in person. I'll be honest. I'm more willing to help somebody that's willing to make the time for me to meet in person for a lunch or coffee and actually have that face-to-face connection, rather than somebody sending me a LinkedIn message that I've never met before and starting with the question, can you give me a job at your company?
Right.
I'm sure you get a ton of that.
Yeah, and I think that, for me, because I've done a few different things, with my LinkedIn, trying to establish like what is it for? It is very much a networking platform. And you have sales, you have people that, have services, you've got hotshot companies, you've got different, heavy hauling, and if you need something moved, and so there's this whole network of people that I'll see communicate, because I worked a little bit in that for a while, and so I've got a network on there that it's more about trucking and logistics, and that whole realm, which that's there's different tiers there as well. But you can see how efficient it is, because if there's somebody in North Dakota with, an RGN trailer,
Yeah.
and they can bring back a piece of equipment for somebody. It's perfect. If you have someone in your network in the Permian Basin that needs this excavator hauled to Texas and you're on LinkedIn. But not everybody's on LinkedIn for that purpose.
Right.
So you have to have a certain amount of social etiquette and
Yes.
understanding of who's doing what. And there is a lot of that just mass promotion. And I think even for myself, I think that, self-promotion is okay. You have to promote what you do. But you have to find a way to put it out there to where you have value, and you're sharing your skills, you're sharing ideas, you're creating relationships, but then knowing what your target market is that you're doing business with. Or if you have something that you're sharing, your content, that it's relevant to your audience. And so knowing your audience is huge. Knowing your network, and then understanding how the network it functions, because people that haven't been around networking, or having mentors, and you're just trying to figure it out, we have a lot of that, because like I said, I didn't
Yeah.
have that. And so I can see absolutely that's getting you pointed in the right direction, that's getting you off on the right foot, and giving you a little bit of understanding of what you're doing. In the West Texas oil field, for like actual oil field workers that come out here, they get a job offer and they just show up, you don't have that kind
Yeah.
of guidance, and you don't have that kind of understanding, because it's more raw than going a route that's a little bit more established.
Yes.
And it's different.
Yeah. I completely agree. When I worked in the field for my first job, I noticed that when people were working in the field, they just got their job, they would just show up on location. I think that's just the perfect opportunity, not just to prescribe if you come from an established route, but come from a place of just learning about their story, learning about their experience, and humility is huge. Humility goes a long way. But I keep thinking of free market of ideas. That's the first thought that comes into my mind. But you can share those ideas, you can share those experiences in the field, and it doesn't have to come from an established route. It can just be
Right.
teaching somebody who's new to the field, like how something works, how to operate a rig, and how to operate a rig, how to conduct a JSA or a job safety
Yeah.
agreement.
I agree. And, I think a big part of our broken system, as far as, our culture as a whole in the country, and even within our industry, is not knowing how everything works.
Right.
Like what the procedures are, where it starts, how it ends, and the functions in between. But I can definitely testify to this, that when it comes to just field workers that are just showing up, like they signed up in the office and they got their PPE and out the door they went, you know to teach the new ones, a lot of companies would incorporate a green sticker to go on the hard hat, or a green hat. So they were the ones to watch out for. I was an equipment operator, and so you knew they didn't know what they were doing. So they would know not to get on the right side of my excavator, because that's a blind spot. They're out there and they don't know that. And they're probably going to get, that's where thick skin starts coming in the oil field, because when you get yelled at for something like that, it's not a great feeling. And I've seen so many of them do it. Of course, I've been, new to the field too, but when you're an operator, you have a seat, you're looking at what other people are doing, and you can tell who knows what they're doing and who doesn't.
Right.
It's usually very clear. But a lot of, and, when you come from, old oil and gas generations, it is very, very tough. And you have to learn from, in a lot of ways, humiliation and hardship, and just they're going to make you suffer because someone made them suffer.
Right.
And that is a very hard way of learning, and that is how I learned about welding. That's how I learned to weld. That's also probably part of the reason why I didn't continue, because it is just so absolutely draining, the types of people that you work with, because they're not always educators, they're not always teachers, they're not it's definitely not it's not for the faint of heart. You do have to have thick skin, and it's great. There's all walks of life, but having all of us out there together And then everybody's coming from different parts of the world, different parts of the industry. And then we're building this thing that's rejected, and then we're rejecting each other. And so if we stopped working against each other, and not everybody's going to overlap, but if we really embrace the idea of let's make this a high functioning system, it would function better overall in the world. And we would have more harmony in our oil and gas regions, within businesses, and then so on and so forth. So then you show up every day, you're confident, you know what you're doing, you want to help somebody else because someone helped you, and everybody wants to contribute to things flowing forward and not battling each other out or being cutthroat all the way through, because that translates into our output.
I've seen both sides as well. I've seen the hard way of, because I suffered at my previous like when I was your age, I'm going to make you go through some of the hardships.
Yes.
But then I've also have met people that said, because someone paid it forward for me, I'm going to pay it forward for you.
Yeah.
And let's just say that I have been in contact with those people, the latter, much more frequently than
some of them. Never again.
No, some of them, yeah. So, I've kept in contact with those that were nicer to me than those that was doing tough love.
Yeah.
For instance. But there will come a point, I wanted to make the point that there will come a point in your career, and this is something I actually posted recently about too. I mean, the oil and gas industry has this reputation, especially those that have been in it, to be, you suck it up. It can be tough. You need to develop thick skin. And that's true to a point. But I think that there's a lot of strength that comes from saying enough is enough, and you can say no and you can walk away.
Right.
I think there's a lot of strength in choosing yourself first and knowing that if you can't perform at an optimum capacity at your certain position or or where you in your environment, you can, I mean, there's a lot of power in just walking away. I think that's a power move in itself.
Absolutely. I love that. And I agree. And that could translate over into personal relationships and so many things. But what I've learned with the oil and gas is if you do find yourself in a role that's not right, there's so much more out there.
Yes.
And you can translate because you're thinking all this experience, all that I've learned, it will translate. And maybe not directly, but don't think that it's all for nothing. And because there were so many times where I thought, oh, I've been out here, I've suffered through it, and I've had enough, and I've done all of this, and what am I going to do with it now? But there's knowledge that comes, there's wisdom, there's understanding how things are done. And so to being, hands-on in the field, actually helping, facilitate the build, to working my way out to where it's more about serving the industry and, kind of, being a source
right.
of relationships and networking and kind of helping contribute to that organization. A lot of our problems with everything is the lack of organization.
Yeah.
And then, when you go into exclusion of people for certain reasons, then you instantly have disharmony. Because you're not approaching it from this is our industry, this is the work, this is what we need to do, and everybody that's right for the job come together. You got a lot of politics involved, you've got good old boys, you got family, you've got, people showing up and it just, coming out of nowhere, and you have all these different cultures coming together in this melting pot. And then you've got some that have this, the boom or bust, where, we need to hurry up and do this work because it's going to end. But then you've also got mixed in with people that are innovative, and they're like, we can be a lot more efficient and we can stay working and we can grow this. But it's getting everybody, even if we're not all on the same page, like, let's all read the same story.
Yeah.
Let's all be in the same story, because whether you like it or not, we're all contributing something. But the more that we put it together, working together, the more prosperous we can all be.
I agree with all of that as well. It takes that one person to have that openness, that even though I came from a certain generation and I've done something the way like 20 years, for me to say, let's see what you have to offer. Let's see what you have, what ideas you can share. The question, what do you think, is so empowering to that person. It's very empowering. And just taking that first step to give that opportunity of innovation, or even try to get your communication styles in the same I mean, same story, same page, it can go a very long way. And the reason why there's a lot of stifling in innovation is there's some people that they're people that may not be willing to that may not be open to that kind of conversation. I was in a podcast a few months ago, and I was asked, what would you like to see in the future 10 years from now? And I think the answer that I said was having more crucial conversations, not just walking or not just leaving somebody out of the conversation just because of your perceptions or being exclusionary, but actually talking to that person, asking curious questions, learning about their story, learning about where their thought process is coming from can can be liberating, not just for that person that's asking the question, but even the person that's providing the idea.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that some of it, when we think of including others and new ways of thinking, I think some respond with fear because they think that they're losing their job. It's a dying breed because we do have some dying breeds. There are aspects of oil and gas that aren't as necessary anymore or not needed at all, or there's more innovative, efficient ways of doing things. But that isn't just oil and gas. That's everything. People stream Netflix and Amazon Prime. They do not have VCRs anymore. We are not watching movies. There is no Blockbuster. We're all okay with that. How great is it to, dial into Netflix if you want to watch a documentary or there's a show or a movie on Prime, anything like that. Like we have luxuries now that, 10, 15 years ago, you're still rewinding the tape to take it back before you're going to get charged the fee, and you're having to drive and use all these resources to go to this brick and mortar. Well, it's much more efficient now. And that's not saying like, well, okay, what happened to the people at Blockbuster? Well, you have to stay innovative because we're going to continue moving forward. And so you find a new way to contribute or to build with that. So within oil and gas, we've become much more innovative. And I think people that aren't afraid, that are excited about the possibilities of the future because it can open up more jobs. It can open up a new way of doing things. It may change the landscape of how we've done things, but it's necessary because as we evolve and we learn, it's exciting to know that there are better ways of doing things and that you can communicate more effectively and that you're not just having this age-old narrative where, the oil field is scary and it is rough and it is, not for the faint of heart. It is not for anyone that is sensitive or, looking for an easy road. But you can change that narrative and say that like we have become so much more educated, so much more advanced with the technology that we use, and that we can be safer, we can make more money, we can be a lot more conservative about what we're producing to where we are producing more of our consumables in an efficient way. And we take out the rest of it, the arguing and the discourse and the fear, and we get to the work and we get to the conversation and we can make a lot of change in a short amount of time.
I have a story. I had a mentor in one of my jobs, and one of the things that he mentioned to me was a common tactic somebody uses if they did something innovative, if they did something new, is that they would keep that IP or keep that property to themselves. They didn't want to share how they developed something. And I had a colleague one time and I asked them, could you give me your code? I'm very interested in seeing your code and how you developed making something more efficient in our process. And he said, there's no way I'm going to give you my code. That's job security.
Oh.
And I had a mentor that told me that he had to change my colleague's mindset, that you have to, it's actually the opposite. Teaching somebody how to replace you or teaching somebody your job is the best way for you to move forward.
Absolutely.
And it takes those role models of all generations in the oil and gas industry to have that kind of mindset to continue that innovation. We wouldn't have to have the reputation of us being a little bit behind when it comes to innovation, or a little bit behind when it comes to technology, or there's a curve called the diffusion of innovation, being a late adopter in that diffusion of
Oh,
innovation.
yeah.
So I I wholeheartedly agree that a lot of people like to spend their not like to, but they do spend their energy in the argumentation aspect of it, when in reality, when they just get rid of the fear and learn that it is the paying forward part, it's teaching somebody how to do your job, teaching somebody how to replace you, is the way for you to hand over to move forward, is actually a very liberating mindset.
It really is, and I can appreciate that, and I can look back and recognize some people that I've known that they didn't want to move forward, and
Yeah.
so they become more of a dying breed. Whereas if you were innovative and saw a way to turn your skill into some type of trade to teach others,
Yeah.
or to maybe even jump course a little bit, but to be open-minded enough to understand that you are outgrowing your role. It's exciting. Like you said, it's liberating, but it can be so fearful, because if all you've ever known how to do is this
Hmm.
one skill and you're so limited, and there's other people that are the same way, you're gonna hoard your resources, because, like your colleague said, it's a job security. And there's a lot of that fear in job security in oil and gas, because, for one, we got the boom and bust culture. So
Yeah.
you're expecting your job to end. Then if you don't know how to do your job efficiently, or you're going to get replaced by someone's family member or buddy, that's something completely out of your control. So there's a lot of things going on in oil and gas, and we have been a little behind the times as far as, being late adopters and being innovative with our technology, but we're not at the same time, because there's so much that's happening. But we have the mainstream narrative that's drowning out anything good that we're doing. Then you have people within the industry that are afraid of losing their role, so they don't want to share the knowledge or adopt these new technologies, and so there's that resistance. So we're wasting a lot of energy, and the irony that we're wasting energy when we're out here creating energy, but we're wasting energy with arguments and resisting the evolution of natural growth, because life is always moving forward. It's always growing. It's always reproducing in some way. Winter turns into spring and summer comes again, and we're back to fall. You cannot resist those changes. And so with new seasons and new minds and new ways of learning and developing, you can't resist that kind of change, because it's going to happen with or without you. But to jump in on the innovation, or to learn about it, or just to embrace, we're going to create more opportunity.
I think it becomes a lot more efficient whenever you learn to embrace that change is going to happen. I think a lot of people hoarding their ideas, or hoarding their fear due to job security, they're not getting out of their comfort zone, and they're limiting their chances to grow and learn something new. That was a mindset I had to adopt. And that's also part of the reason why I even started the YouTube channel, creating content to educate young professionals, or those that are in school that are about to enter the oil and gas industry as a young professional, about how to network, the importance of networking, why getting a field internship is important, why going to the field is important. Basically sharing my career path in how I got to where I ended up being, or how I developed my mindset. A lot of people don't want to share that, unless a lot of people don't want to share it, or feel uncomfortable in sharing that. But I've adopted the mentality of paying it forward through the YouTube channel, or through my podcast, Petro Papers, where I make complex technical papers accessible and digestible to young professionals, or to people in the industry. And that way, not that they don't have to read the paper, but understand the paper better by
Right.
interviewing the author, like a book club
Yeah.
in a way. But where I'm going with this is that there's a stagnation. I mean, I was one of those people that would hoard my ideas too, thinking that that was the norm. But the reality is that you're not accepting the inevitable. You're not accepting that change is eventually going to happen. The innovation is eventually going to come. The there's also a benefit in that you develop trust with other people when you teach other people.
Right.
when you teach other people, and that in itself becomes an additional benefit of building relationships, and they can introduce you to other opportunities that you don't know about. And because I ended up adopting that mentality, I was able to I was able to get a lot of opportunities, especially in this industry. And there were new opportunities, not just the traditional roles, too.
Well, yeah, and I think that that's something too, that when we don't know what's out there, you cling to what's familiar.
Yes.
But I think that, I mean, with what you're able to do, to kind of break everything down and make it more digestible, and kind of, I mean, being that mentor from afar.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, there's many ways to be a mentor and to shine that light. And so I think that that's great. That's one area of the industry where, you're really kind of taking the reins and controlling the narrative and just kind of leading the way, clearing the path. Like you said, you've paid it forward, and I'm sure there's going to be others that are going to follow in your footsteps, and that's really exciting. So I think everything that you have going on, like, you've just positioned yourself, you understand the industry, you know who you are, and the challenges that we face as women in oil and gas. I think that they have become strength builders and opportunities on their own to do things differently and to just stand your ground and believe in yourself and have that confidence. And then when you have that kind of confidence, you can just continue moving forward and growing, and other people are going to see that growth and want it for themselves. And so then that's the natural progression.
No, I agree with that as well. There are people that are in my their cohort generation, you can say that have that mentality too, of wanting to pay it forward. And I never really thought being a woman in oil and gas was ever limiting to me. In fact, I've always turned it into a strength. I've always turned it into, well, I automatically stick out like a sore thumb. I can distinguish myself pretty easily.
Right.
So,
absolutely.
And I never thought of it as a chip on my shoulder as just being a female in oil and gas. And I've also tried changing the narrative in that I'm not a female petroleum engineer. I'm a petroleum engineer who happens to be female.
Right.
So it's never I'd never wanted to put those qualifiers. I'm just as good as anyone else. I fit in. And everyone has every opportunity to fit in, and everyone has every opportunity to make the most out of this industry should you want to be in this industry.
Absolutely. Well, that's really great. And I appreciate you coming on today. It's been great talking to you and hearing about your journey. It's very refreshing. And that we can look for Petro Papers on YouTube and follow along and learn more about what you're doing and how you're paying it forward and continuing to contribute to the industry.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks again.